so I won't show you that. Okay, so we've talked about object mode and edit mode. There's these things up here that are called workspaces, and we are in the layout. Oh, we're modeling, but that's texture. Oh, that's edit. So we're in layout, and we want to do first thing UV editing. Okay, so this is where we're actually going to kind of like assign texture coordinates to vertices in our object. And so when we choose that workspace, it splits the screen in half. We've got our object over on the right, and this is UV space over here. Most of the things that we can do in terms of like transformation and views and so forth on the object side, we can do on the UV side. So we can use a scroll wheel to zoom. We can grab this hand and move around like that. We can do rotations and things. That's generally going to be for the stuff that we create inside. But right now, this is kind of like blank. The fact that we see nothing here is an indication that there is, or apparently is, no UV map associated with this object. In fact, you remember when I started modeling the object, I inserted a UV sphere, and then I started like distorting it and mashing it around to get this. That actually meant that we had a UV map associated with our sphere. We just don't see it. I want to show that if we put in some other objects, I should add in on this side. So if I were to add, let's say a cube, and you see over on the left-hand side, I showed this during environment mapping, texture mapping. This is the cube map, like this is the association between the texture and the sides of the cube. And before we go on, I want to just show, like, if I click on faces in the object, the faces are selected in UV space, basically. So there's this like correspondence going back and forth. You can do it both ways. So I believe if I click, I'm the wrong move here. If I click here, no, that's not going to work. I'm actually not seeing anything but the selected map. So this is we're going to address this in a minute. So let me get rid of this thing that I'm inserting. We have our character. So basically, if I'm in object mode, and I'm sorry, if I have face select chosen, this thing up here, and I click on a face, then you see something lights up over here. This is the equivalent of what we were seeing with the cube, except the cube had 6 faces, and there were 6 regions in UV space. Now we have all these little facets. But the kind of annoying thing is we don't see them all at once. Now we can do selection here, and then we'll see more of it. We'll see more of it lit up. But if you remember, he's telling you that when you select, you're only selecting the front side. So I think I forgot to say this last time, but X-ray mode, which I think is hiding back here. Yeah. Toggle X-ray. I was saying, oh, X-ray is so that you can make the object transparent. You can kind of see through it, like this, right? It has another effect that goes with it, which is that when you do selection, you select front and back facing polygons. Okay, so it's not just what you see; it's like you get the full depth when you do selection. So anyway, we don't really need that right now. I'm going to turn it off, but I just want to know. All right, so what this guy recommends, though, as far as this annoyingness of you clicking and only seeing individual, is there's this option over here. It's called UV sync, and that makes you kind of see the whole UV map, whether it's selected or not. Okay, so that's recommended that you do that so that you've got the whole UV map selected. Okay. Got that. So this is the map that's like derived from the sphere, and we're going to modify this. Now, I'm not sure about the theory behind this, but basically what we're going to do is we're going to select some regions on the surface of our pear that are easily mappable to 2D portions of UV space, because we have this weird like 3D pear to 2D space and it's got to get unwrapped. How do we do that? So this idea is, I don't know what the process is called, but it's seam selection. We're basically picking the edges of some different regions on our 3D object to make this process simpler. So let us do that. I'm going to edge select mode here so that I'm picking edges. Right? And if you remember, I talked about Alt to get a loop. Right? We did this before, like when we were just like trying to squeeze it, shrink it, whatever. But what we're going to do is pick a vertical loop, which goes from pole to pole. Okay. And the thing that the tutorial does is it makes this into like 4 slices, basically like well, I'll just show you. I'll do it. I will take this one as well. Actually, when I do that, I've deselected the previous one. So Shift is how we add. So I'm doing Shift Alt, and I click that, and then I'm going to do this one over here. I'm going to do this one over here, and you see that I've selected these 4 longitudinal slices, and those edges that are selected are being shown over here as well, right? So we've got 4 slices, and I believe I need to. So this is the magic phrase here, mark seam. This is like saying that these will be important for the texture, that we're going to kind of cut up the texture to match these 4 areas. And we've done that. And then we go, so that is actually not selecting the entire object. This thing has been left out. We're going to do that now by, and then so I can see the top. We want to get like a wrap around the shaft of the stem, and then we also want to get one for the cap. And Alt Shift to get both of them. All right. So I've gotten both of those now. And I need to mark those as well. So we're going to go to we're in edit mode, and now we have to do this magic operation called unwrap that will take these seam areas and perform something over here on the UV side. Just want to make sure that all of this got everything. We go here, we unwrap, please work. There we go. Okay, so the areas that we selected become these things called UV islands over on the UV side. And now we can breathe a little sigh of relaxation here. This thing is this also gets the underwater part that you can't see, and then that little circle is the cap there. Okay. So the reason why these are out of whack is because this is like the shaft unrolled, so they look like they're mismatched in size, but they are correctly matched. So there is something to be aware of here, and that is that the scale is all uniform, okay? Whatever these UV units are on the left-hand side, they are kind of the same between these different entities, which we're calling islands. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, the slices on the sides of the pear. We've got the shaft and the stem, and we've got the cap and stem. And so over here on the left-hand side, we can select things. Actually, I think I'll be in this mode, right? I'm hovering over, I'm hitting L to like whatever I'm over I get. I can pick up just a cap right there. And we can move these things around. So I can like take this and like I can move it over here. Okay, like doesn't change anything because Blender is remembering the correspondence between UV and this stuff over here. It doesn't change anything on that side. So basically this step here, we could basically be done with UV unwrapping right now. But the guided tutorial takes it a little further, and basically like there's a whole lot of space that's unused right now, which means that we're kind of like losing texture resolution a little bit. And what we would like to do is use as much of the space as possible, kind of pack it or fill it up with as much like actual textured stuff as possible. And so that would entail making these bigger, right? Which we can do here with scaling. But what I've done there is I've now non-uniformly scaled one of these UV islands. Like it doesn't match up with the other ones, and that's not something we should do. So we want to make sure that we are always getting like all of them. And I want to scale now. And for some reason, sometimes it doesn't do it uniformly, but this is uniform. If there's a way to do it where it kind of like stretches in one direction, we don't want that, right? We want it to get uniformly bigger in the horizontal and vertical direction. Let's just say I do that. Now, of course, it's not all completely inside the box. And so there's this little game of like rearrangement where I find this kind of relaxing to take these and move them around. And we're going to have to rotate them, of course, but we'll get to all that in time. So you should look at the video for this, but basically like make them as big as possible, rotate them, like kind of move them around and get them all fit in there as well as you can. I'm not going to do that. I don't believe it's technically necessary for what comes next, and it takes time that I don't have, that you don't have. All right, so I've done the UV unwrap there, and everything is good for this stage, okay? There's no actual texture yet. We just have the association between UV coordinates and vertices. And I'm going to go ahead and save as, and I will call this, before I did this before, I called it pair with UV blend. I'm going to actually cancel out and just load that. It's my cheater way of doing this. Okay. So this was the result of me like taking some time and rearranging things a bit. Okay, so we got that, and now we move on to painting. We want to put a texture onto our object. So first of all, you've got to actually go find a texture. If you follow along with the tutorials and you register like you need to, you can like download their apple texture, their knife texture, whatever. I want it to be different, and nope, I did it wrong. Where did I get this? That's what I got from the JPEG. It's so hard. I mean, you know better, but like it's so hard to search on the internet for a texture that is not like a place where you've got to register and pay and whatever. Like you can do an image search for like free usage rights, but like inevitably you get taken to these sites that have watermarks on them, and you're not going to get jack squat without registering, even if it says it's free. Anyway, I found this, whatever. It looks kind of pear-like. So what the idea is, we're gonna wanna try and like put this onto our paper, okay? And we're not strictly like taking this image and somehow magically wrapping it. I believe one of the tutorial videos that I'm linking has something about that. Like you have an image, you have an object, like stretch and transform the image so that it completely covers the object. And that's where you'd be interested in that image, for example, being seamless, you know, like the left-hand side matches up with the right-hand side, so that when you bring it around and they touch each other, you don't see like a transition. We're not going to do that. We're going to do what's called painting, which is where we're going to kind of like use our brush is going to be like this, so that when we paint on our object, we will paint this texture onto the object. And there's different modes to do it. I did it with an airbrush, and anyway, so it's going to come from this. But we don't have that association yet, right? That's not in the program at all. Okay, so here we are. We're looking at the results of our UV unwrap. And now we want to move to the next stage, which is called texture painting. And so that's a different workspace, this thing. All right, we click it. We still basically have our object and our UV space on the left, but the object is purple for some reason. Purple indicates like ready to be painted, but has nothing on it yet. Like for some reason, purple is like the blank canvas of texture paint mode in Blender. And then over here, this is indicating that we have texture coordinates, but there is no color, right? There is no actual color associated with it. And I just kind of spoiled it, but this is in some sense the result of what the texture painting will do, okay? We'll be painting on the object, and it will be associating pixel colors with the UV coordinates, and then that becomes our texture wrapped around the object with those 4 slices. Okay, that's what's going to come out of this process, and we will see that over here on the left as we go. Okay, so we need to make a new texture image. So we do new. Come up with a name and call it pair, new pair. We'll call it that. That cannot have been used before. For some reason, he recommends 2048 by 2048, but here's where you're getting into your actual texture resolution. Alpha, we keep it checked, and color. So this is like the base color, and it's what you're going to get before you put any image on there. So I'm just going to make kind of yellowish green. All right, and we say okay. And so you see that that color that I chose becomes the default texture color. We're going to, but you already saw when I opened it, that is like the background. So all the painting that we're going to do is only going to affect these islands. All that stuff will get covered over, or that's the stuff that's in between the islands will be ignored. But right now, it's what we would get without doing any painting. Okay, so this thing that we just made, new pair texture, even though the UV coordinates are associated with the object, the actual texture image is not yet associated with the object, so we have to go over and do that. And I believe we do that over here on this thing called Active Tool and Workspace. Okay, so material is where we would say that our object is shiny or matte or whatever. We're not going to do that. We're just going to say it's a texture. Okay, and choose that. What did we just make? So, oh, here it is. It's confusing. Like, this is a texture image, and like that other thing that I just showed you that has the pair, that's another thing, right? That's an image file. They're not the same, and we're not, make sure we're choosing the correct thing. Okay, there we go. So now the default texture image is applied to our pair, okay? So we have made that association, it's no longer purple. And now we can actually do painting. So we've got this brush here, and we can mess around with our brush. Let's see. This is showing a brush size, and I believe if I hit, well, I can change this, the brush radius. Now I have huge brush, like a smaller brush, but you can also hit F and like scale the brush right there. So let's just say I've done that. I have a color chosen, it's white, I have a brush size. We'll look at this in a minute. This is just like how it's going to get combined with the color that's already there. And we can paint. Okay, so we painted on 3D object, and it went to the correct place in UV space. I believe we can do the same thing over here. I'm probably going to break it down by doing this. Yeah, you can do it either way, right? But it probably is more natural to like do stuff over here in 3D. But that's not what we want to do, okay? Like we want to take our texture from that pair image that I showed you and kind of apply that to the object. So I'm going to undo what I did and try and do that. All right, so the brush strength is 1. That's good. We will play around with this a little bit more later. We choose that thing by going down here to the texture properties. And new. Oh, this is why I wasn't sure that I could change that. Where is it? Oh, that's not what I want to do. This step, but I literally forgot the place where I choose. Browse image, link. There we go. Okay, so that brought it in. And we want to look at this thing called mapping. Mapping. Just one more thing we have to do to make it be the like that doesn't look right, right? Oh, here we go. We go back up here. Now, active tool, texture. Here we go. She's buried down here. This stencil. Okay. Now, this makes the image appear. So basically, the idea is that like where the image is, like you're doing like a rubbing in some sense. Like you put the image over your object, and then the thing that you're doing with your brush is like transferring exactly that part of the image that's over your object right down onto the object. Okay, and so we can move this. Oh, right click. Okay, so I move it like that. There we go. And it's a little bit like a billboard, I guess you could say, because it's not moving. I can change the object, and it's always going to be on top of it. Okay. I still got my brush. I've got this selected, and let's just try. Let's see what happens here. So I start to scribble, and I see that I have transferred something. Okay, I can move it a little bit and scribble some more, and we see that so we can make some different choices here with the brush. I can't remember where I made that choice, so I won't torch you by searching for it again. But like, there's all sorts of brush options in general, just like any good paint program. And this is just like how things get combined. Mix means that it's going to be the underlying color, you know, half the underlying color, half the color of the stencil texture, whatever. You could replace it, you could subtract it, multiply it, all kinds of things you can do. I lost where this was, but as I was playing around with this before, there's like an airbrush mode for how the brush works. What I'm going to do is undo the drawing that I did, and I'm going to make it larger. Now, this won't take so long. Put it along like this, rotate it around, draw some more, rotate it around, draw some more. And basically, color this thing up with hair texture. Find those missing, those still green areas. Pretty good down there.
And maybe you could do this onto the texture as well, yeah.
Over here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Experiment with both ways and see what faster or what gives better looking results, right? So there's something in the video that I'm not going to do because I kind of forgot how to do it, but it's like what we'd like to do is just go right over the top there. But if I do that, I will paint the stem. And so it's like you can hide the stem, paint, and then bring the stem back, and then make the body of the pear disappear and paint the stem some other color. What I'm going to do is it's the dumb person's approach to Blender. I'm just going to make my brush smaller, and probably do something bad in terms of how it looks, but I can more fine control if I'm on that or not. But you get the idea, right? So we've more or less, that looks a little weird there, right? Like you can see an actual edge between how far I got on one pass versus another. So this is a place where you'd be like, okay, I'll bump this up again, and I will paint some more, and now that looks a little bit better, right? So this part I think you call art, and that's not what I am. I'm not an artist. I'm not an art teacher. I'm not good at this, but we've got our pear painted, okay? And I'm just going to be real lazy and say pear stems are green, right? I would just leave it green, but you could do something else there, obviously. Okay, so are there any questions about how we got to this point? Or anything else you would want to try? Yeah, like add. So when you add colors together, you're getting closer to white, basically. So it's going to make it brighter, which is not bad. I don't know, like maybe that's the look you want. I don't know. You play around, you decide what looks good. So anyway, we've got ourselves a textured pair in Blender, and you should always remember to like save. I'll call this new pair with UV and texture. I save the Blender file. I believe this thing over here, see how there's like a little star hovering over the image? So this means that you haven't yet saved it. So we can save that as, we'll call it as defaulting to new pair paint, right? And so if we go outside here, that's what we just painted, right? And this is going to be, I'm trying to connect this all together. This is going faster than I thought it would. To connect this together, this is going to be the texture that gets loaded into OpenGL. Okay, so by the way, homework 4 is going out today. My server in my lab just went down, or I lost contact with it, so I wasn't able to connect the homework 4 page to the course page, but I will get it up within a few hours. As I said, it's going to be, do something like this, make a model, paint it, whatever. And I have a link to another kind of tutorial that's a little bit more, if you want to do like not organic, but if you want to do like boxy stuff, something that's more industrial looking, or a machine, or an architectural thing, something that's got angles, right, instead of curvy like this. So yes, you're going to make an object, and then you're going to do a capital ROM spline and use that as a camera trajectory to fly around. Okay, so that's two things that are like outside of OpenGL. You got to get it into the OpenGL program, and the way to do that is what I said about capital ROM spline. You're going to load that in as like a series of XYZs, basically. Like that's where the camera should be. You're going to select, manually, whatever. Maybe you could do it in Blender, but like you're going to pick X1, Y1, Z1, X2, Y2, Z2. These are the control points, And then, like I showed you one with 4 control points, you get a kind of nice, smooth, curved trapezoid, right? So I asked you to do, I think, like 25 control points, and it's gonna, you're gonna generate something which is many, many more than 25 points. That's gonna be the actual discretized curve. You just put that into a TXT file or CSV or whatever you want, and then your OpenGL program will read that, and it will use that to like call look at, with the eye parameters. Like that's where the camera is at point 1, point 2, point 3, all the way up to point 100 or whatever. Okay, and you keep re-rendering the scene. So that's number 1. Number 2 is how do you get your Blender model into OpenGL? So first things first, I just saved a .blend file. That is useless to OpenGL, right? Only Blender knows how to read .blend files. Pair, new pair.png. We're getting a little closer there on textures, but as far as the 3D model, we have to do an export. So we go down here to export. We have some different types, and I am going to do wavefront OBJ. We're already loading OBJ models in Bullet Creatures using this load OBJ function that the OpenGL tutorial provides. So we want to give it a name. Okay, new pair with UV to texture.obj. That's great. But this is a key thing that will trip you up if you don't do it correctly, and that is we do need to like change a few things over here. And the main thing that we need to change is we need to make triangulated mesh, because remember our object mesh in Blender that we've been working is a quadrilateral. And everything we're kind of using in the OpenGL tutorials are triangle meshes. So this will triangulate the quadrilateral mesh and output it as triangles. I believe that's all we need to do. Okay, OBJ, we export it. And there it goes. I lost that. Unless I just went out. Don't know why I lost that. And so now we have this new pair OBJ here. And we also have the new pair PNG, which is our texture. I'll take you to the code in a minute, but we have to actually change that texture file to a BMP, a bitmap, because there is no load PNG, unfortunately. I know we're going way back in time here. And so I can do that real quick. Up here to open up documents, blended files, repair, file, export. If I just do this, it's not enough. You can't just export. You gotta dive in. And I don't think you need compatibility options. You can't do run length, but you do need to make sure that it's 24-bit. Okay, so we export it as 24-bit, and away it goes. Okay, so we've got an OBJ file, we've got a BMP file, and now it's time for us to try and get it to the code. So I'm going to just show you, and this is linked, and you're told to do this in the homework description. What you could base this on is tutorial number 9, which doesn't seem relevant, EBO indexing. But basically, what this tutorial. Wait a second, I lied. That was a flat out lie. Tutorial 7, which does sound relevant, model loading. I don't know why I said tutorial. Sorry. Go to tutorial 7 and take a look inside the code here. We've got a load OBJ. We've got a load DBS. We're going to change that to like load BMP. Okay, like that's basically what we're doing. I'm going to actually get out of here and not save that because that's supposed to be the original. So what I did, a little quick and dirty demo here, is I took last year a student who did this homework, did it well. I just took what they submitted. And I call it display object. So basically this looks exactly like tutorial 7. You can just sort of take tutorial 7, copy it, rename it. You're not even gonna have to touch the shaders at all, any of that, okay? But this is where you're gonna bring in your OBJ file and your BMP file. Like they're gonna come in and live in this directory, and you're gonna have to change the code. So you can see that the student did something with the board, a board cube. Is that a thing? A board cube? All right, you get a board cube. And I know you want to see that much more than a pair, right? I can do that. I can bring that back. I can resurrect it. But first, so this is the OBJ that I exported out of Blender, and then I've got my BMP that I exported out of GIMP or whatever to convert the pin. And I'm not going to like scroll too far away because then I will spoil it by showing you their camel ROM code or whatever. But like, there's more going on here than just loading. So taking tutorial 7, make sure that you can load in your code and then taking over the camera position by using your capital ROM positions to call look at. So that's what I did. And if we run it now, we will talk about everything we're seeing here. Part of the homework assignment is not just to move the camera, but to draw the spline. So all those like squiggles that you see in the background are either the past or the future position of the camera. It's, in some sense, it's the roller coaster that the camera is going on. But I made, once upon a time in this class, I actually asked students to do the virtual roller coaster. And as I said, it's kind of complicated because not only do you have to keep track of the eye position of the camera, you also have to keep track of the center, like where you're looking, so that you're looking down the track. And I made it simpler on this assignment because I said, just have it look at the center of your object. So you're always looking in the same place, the object. You're just moving around, looking at it from different angles, getting closer, getting farther. If you want to slightly change that, I don't mind, but it's just supposed to make it simple. You just take the X, Y, Z's from your capital ROM spline and make those the I parameter for the lookout function, okay, to get your view matrix. All right, so what else is going on here? So the lines, you see those are the seam lines. Actually, this is something I need to put into the homework because I don't think I ever noticed this before, and you might not notice it either, depending on the texture that you choose. So when I first ran this, I saw some pear texture. I saw the pear shape perfectly. I saw some pear texture on it, but it was like I saw the individual islands, like it wasn't mapped correctly. And I'm like, what up? What did I do wrong here? And I was hunting around, like, was it the Blender export, whatever, and I come across this. Like, I don't know. I'll load BMP. Okay, yeah. So basically, not to get too far into the weeds here, but like if we pair with, if you look inside an OBJ file, it has a couple different sections. This section, V and 3 numbers, this is a list of vertex positions. You don't really need to know this, but and I was like, what's going on with the texture coordinates? Where are the texture coordinates in this file? By the way, this is where you learn that like the texture itself is not embedded in the OBJ. It's like a separate thing. So these are the texture coordinates. V texture, okay, the vertex texture, whatever. The U, the V. I'm like, there's something messed up. Maybe it's like U is minus U or V is minus V or something like that. And so I went back into the code, which of course I've closed out now, but let's look again. And sure enough, I come across this. If you read VT, you scan in the U and the V value, and then they have this line, UV.Y equals minus UV.Y. Invert this because we only use DDS texture. Remove if you want to use a bitmap. So I'm like, oh, I'm using a bitmap, and that means that my V is upside down. So why do I need to go into the common texture? But I had our obj loader. But yes, you're going to have to do this too, I guess. Like go into obj loader and like comment out that line if you're using a BMP. I guess you could save it as a DBS. And then your texture will not be upside down. Okay, so yeah, that's why I was right. That's not what I was right. I fixed all that, but there's still a problem. And as of this moment, I'm not quite sure how to solve it. And that is those green lines. Those green lines are the seams. And basically what it means is that somehow the texture coordinates right near the seams are going into the background area and pulling out that light green color that I chose as the, you know, the default color for the entire texture. So I'm still fiddling around with that. But rest assured that if you were to submit and your object is showing seams, I will not penalize you for it, since I myself cannot make it go away. Right? And I actually painted those numbers on so that I can see, because the weird thing is, you see that there's only like 3 of them. One of the seams seems okay, like the one between 3 and 4, although you can see a little discontinuity of the texture, you don't see the green. So I don't know what's going on with that. All right. Any questions about this? Okay, so I will, I've got the homework posted as soon as I get my server back up. One slight question mark is previously the graduate section of this homework had to do with image morphing, and I'm kind of feeling like not asking grad students to do that. So there will be something else. So when I post this thing in an hour or whatever, the grad section will be empty. And then I will fill it in by tonight, something a little different. Okay. All right, that's it. I'll see y'all on Friday.